So I think we got it going now. All right, beautiful people. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Okay, Trina, I got it together. In here rushing. Literally just got back in the house. Driving from Newport News. We left out early, like 5-something this morning. I'm going to go drop my husband's truck off at the shop. Drop his truck off. We actually picked up the rental car already. We had that yesterday. That way, because they got a project this morning. So we had to get over there and get back before the video started. I literally just walked in the house 5 minutes ago. All right, beautiful people. My notes written in here. WASWAP. That's what you can use, an acronym. All right, beautiful people. Chapter 2. Okay. All right, beautiful people. Happy Saturday. It is December the 18th, 2021, day 331 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. Another 3-year consecutive day count, day 999. Yes, 999. When we come back Monday, it'll be the official count, day 1,000. Clearly, we're way over the 1,000-day count because we don't count the Sabbaths and the feast day, Sabbath days that we take off. So we're clearly way over the count. But the days that we've been present, 999. 999. And I believe the series of 9 numbers, it means I think it's we reached a milestone, a turning point. Let me look. I kind of keep notes of my number. Hold on, let me see. I'm gonna tell y'all. That auction live. Yeah, girl. Hold on, look. They we just found out yesterday too, because it was people that was bidding on the vehicles that were doing it online. My husband's like, shoot, next time we're going to do it online instead of coming all the way up here. I'm like, well, we still going to have to come up here if we get it to pick it up. So why not come here and enjoy the action? But it was pretty fun. That one guy on lane 1 where we was on at first, he had me rolling. Yeah! And everybody calling out, he doing his little hollering, scream and stuff. That's why I started recording. We was over there cracking up. Right, but it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. It was maybe my second one. James be going to the auctions all the time, be getting good deals and everything. So he was like, I want you to go with me to this one. So, but we had fun. We had fun, and we got what we went there for. Well, one of them. We didn't get that charger. Y'all see that charger? Oh, she was a beauty. He loves chargers. Yeah. They went up more than what we wanted to spend on it. So it was like, yep, there'll be another one sometime soon. Okay, yeah, the series of 9 numbers means completion. Ain't that something, right? Completed a major milestone. Time to focus on finish what you started. Put the energy into what you started and get it completed. Major milestone. Mom, shalom, shalom. Auntie Belinda Brown. You know what? I saw your question yesterday when I was about to get off a live. You was asking how close were we to you? I'm not sure how close we were to you guys. We probably it took us an hour and a half to get there from here. So we may have been pretty close to you guys. Up there is the auction on Terminal Boulevard in Richmond, Virginia. So it was probably like 30 minutes from y'all, maybe, possibly. I'm not sure, Auntie. Okay, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started with the call for a wholehearted commitment. Dana. Yeah, it's definitely a skill. It's definitely a skill. Shucks, it takes skills to hear the auction speaker. I forget what you call him. Him understand what he's saying until he slow down or something, you know. But James, he good at the fast talking and understanding the fast talk. All right, y'all. A call for wholehearted commitment. These are the commands, decrees, and regulations that Yahuwah your God commanded me to teach you. You must obey them in the land you are about to enter and occupy, and you and your children and grandchildren must fear Yahuwah your God as long as you live. If you obey all his decrees and commands, you will enjoy a long life. Listen closely, Israel, and be careful to obey. Then all will go well with you, and you will have many children in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as Yahuwah, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Listen, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, he is God alone. And you must love Yahuwah your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road and when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Yahuwah your God will soon bring you into the land he swore to give you when he made a vow to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is a land with large, prosperous cities that you did not build. The houses will be richly stocked with goods you did not purchase. You will draw water from cisterns you did not dig, and you will eat from vineyards and olive trees you did not plant. When you have eaten your fill in this land, be careful not to forget Yahuwah, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. You must fear Yahuwah your God and serve him. When you take an oath, you must only use his name. You must not worship any of the gods of the neighboring nations, for Yahuwah your God, who lives among you, is a jealous God. His anger will flare up against you, and he will wipe you from the face of the earth. You must not test Yahuwah your God as you did when you complained at Massa. You must diligently obey the commands of Yahuwah your God, all the laws and decrees he has given you. Do what is right and good in Yahuwah's sight, so all will go well with you. Then you will enter and occupy the good land that Yahuwah swore to give to your ancestors. You will drive out all the enemies living in the land just as Yahuwah said you would. In the future, when your children ask you, what is the meaning of these laws, decrees, and regulations that Yahuwah our God has commanded us to obey? Then you must tell them, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but Yahuwah brought us out of Egypt with his strong hand. Yahuwah did miraculous signs and wonders before our eyes, dealing terrifying blows against Egypt and Pharaoh and all his people. He brought us out of Egypt so he could give us this land he had sworn to give to our ancestors. And Yahuwah our God commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear him, so that he can continue to bless us and preserve our lives as he has done to this day. For we will be counted as righteous when we obey all the commands that Yahuwah our God has given unto us. Yahuwah is one. Shalom, shalom. All right, y'all. Oh, let me pull it from behind me. All right. Let's read these next two chapters of Maccabees, chapter 8 and chapter 9. First Maccabees. All right. First Maccabees chapter 8. Now Yehuda had heard of the Romaeum, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them, and that they were men of great valor. And it was told him also of their wars and noble acts, which they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute, and what they had done in the country of Spain for the winning of the mines of silver and gold which is there, and that by their policy and patience they had conquered all the place, though it were very far from them, and the kings also that came against them from the uttermost parts of the earth, till they had discomfited them and given them a great overthrow, so that the rest did give them tribute every year. Meaning, give them tribute, meaning they paid taxes to them, right? Besides this, how they had discomfited in battle Philip and Perseus, the king of the Kittim, with others that lifted themselves up against them and had overcome them, how also Antiochus, the great king of Asia, had come against them in a battle, having 120 elephants with horsemen and chariots, and a very great army, was discomforted by them, and how they took him alive and and covenanted that he and such as reigned after him should pay a great tribute and give hostages and that which was agreed upon, and the country of India and Madai and Ludi, and of the goodliest countries which they took of him and gave to King Eumenes. Moreover, how the Yavanim had determined to come and destroy them, and that they, having knowledge thereof, sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them, slew many of them, and carried away captives their women and children, and spoiled them, and took possessions of their lands, and pulled down their strongholds, and brought them to be their servants unto this day. It was told him besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them, but with their friends and such as relied upon them, they kept amity, and that they had conquered kingdoms both far and nigh, so much so as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. Also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom they would, they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted, yet for all this none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end that they might be well ordered, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. In consideration of these things, Yehuda chose Epolemus, son of Euchanan, the son of Colts, and Euchan, the son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome, to make a league of amity and confederacy with them, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, for they saw that the kingdom of the Yavanim did oppress Yasharal with servitude. They went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spoke and said, Yehuda Maccabee with his brethren and the people of the Yahudim have sent us unto you to make a confederacy and peace with you, and that we might be registered your confederates and friends. So that matter pleased the Romanim as well. And this is the copy of the Sefer, which the Senate wrote back again in tables of brass, and sent to Jerusalem, that there might be that there they might have by them a memorial of peace and confederacy. Good success to the Romanim and to the people of the Yahudim by sea and by land forever. The sword also an enemy be far from them. If there come first any war upon the Romanim or any of their confederates throughout all their dominion, the people of the Yahudim shall help them, as the time shall be appointed, with all their heart. Neither shall they give anything unto them that make war upon them, or aid them with victuals, weapons, money, or ships, as it has seemed good unto the Romanim, but they shall keep their covenants without taking anything therefore. In the same manner also, if war come first upon the nation of the Yahudim, the Romanim shall help them with all their heart, according as the time shall be appointed them. Neither shall victuals be given to them that take part against them, or weapons, or money, or ships, as it has seemed good to the Romanim, but shall keep their covenants, and without deceit. According to these articles, did the Romanim, or the Romans, right? It's just the Romans. According to these articles, did the Romanim cut a covenant with the people of the Yahudim. Yahudim is the Jews, right? The Hebrews. Howbeit, if hereafter the one party or the other shall think to meet, to add or diminish anything, they may do it at their pleasures, and whatsoever they shall add or take away shall be ratified. And as touching the evils that Demetrius does to the Yahudim, we have written unto him, saying, wherefore make your yoke heavy upon our friends and confederates, the Yahudim. If therefore they complain any more against you, we will do them justice and fight with you by sea and by land. All right, y'all, last chapter for the day. First Maccabees chapter 9. Well, you're going to work today. You can do that later. Or whenever you get that done, I can get that submitted. But you working today, son. Your daddy should be pulling back up here in a minute. He just wanted to get Jonathan.
Is it just a today project, or is you going back to the site we was at Thursday?
Now you'll see when you get out there. Furthermore, when Demetrius heard the Nicanor and his hosts were slain in battle, he sent Bacchides and Alcimus into the land of Yehuda the second time, and with them the chief strength of his host, who went forth by the way that leads to Gilgal, and pitched their tents before Mazaloth. Mazaloth, which is in Arbel, and after they had won it, they slew much people. Also the first month of the 152nd year, they encamped before Jerusalem, from whence they removed, and went to Berea with 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen. Now Yehuda had pitched his tents at Eliale, and 3,000 chosen men with him, who seeing the multitude of the other army, that don't make sense. Seems like it's an extra word. Okay, I'm gonna read it. Who, seeing the multitude of the other army too, he so great, were sore afraid. Whereupon many conveyed themselves out of the host, so much so as abode of them no more but 800 men. When Yehuda therefore saw that his host slipped away, and that the battle pressed upon him, he was sore troubled in mind and much distressed, for that he had no time to gather them together. Nevertheless, unto them that remained, he said, let us arise and go up against our enemies, if perchance we may be able to fight with them. But they dehorted him, saying, we shall never be able. Let us now rather save our lives, and hereafter we will return with our brethren and fight against them, for we are but few. Then Yehuda said, far be it that I should do this thing and flee away from them. If our time has come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor. With that, the host of Bacchides removed out of their tents and stood over against them, and their horsemen being divided into two troops, and their slingers and archers going before the host, and they that marched in the forward were all mighty men. As for Bacchides, he was in the right wing, so the host drew near on the two parts and sounded their shofars. They also of Yehuda's side, even they sounded their shofars also, so that the earth shook at the noise of the armies, and the battle continued from morning till night. Now when Yehuda perceived that Bacchides and the strength of his army were on the right side, he took with him all the hardy men who discomfited the right wing, and pursued them unto Mount Ashdod. And when they had left the left wing, but when they of the left wing saw that they of the right wing were discomfited, they followed upon Yehuda, and those that were with him hard at the heels from behind. And those that were with him hard at the heels from behind. Whereupon there was a sore battle, so much so as many were slain on both parts. Yehuda also was killed, and the remnant fled. Then Jonathan and Shimon took Yehuda their brother, and buried him on the sepulchre of his fathers in Modim. Moreover, they bewailed him, and all Yasharal made great lamentation for him, and mourned many days, saying, how is the valiant man fallen that delivered Yasharal? As for the other things concerning Yehuda and his wars, and noble acts which he did, and his greatness, they are not written, for they are very, very many. Now after the death of Yehuda, the wicked began to put forth their heads in all the coasts of Yasharal, and there rose up all such as wrought iniquity. In those days also was there a very great famine, by reason whereof the country revolted and went with them. Then Bacchides chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country, and they made inquiry and search for Yehuda's friend, and brought them unto Bacchides, who took vengeance of them and used them despitefully. So there was a great affliction in Yasharal, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them. For this cause all Yehuda's friends came together and said unto Jonathan, Since your brother Yehuda died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies and Bacchides, and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. Now therefore we have chosen you this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that you may fight our battles. Upon this, Jonathan took the governance upon him at that time, and rose up instead of his brother Yehuda. But when Bacchides got knowledge of this, he sought for to slay him. Then Jonathan and Shimon his brother, and all that were with him, perceiving that, fled into the wilderness of Tekoa, and pitched their tents by the water of the pool Aspar. When Bacchides understood, he came near to the Jordan with all his host upon the Sabbath. Now Jonathan had sent his brother Euchanan, a captain of the people, to pray his friends, the Nabathiim, that they might leave with them their carriage, which was much. But the children of Jambri came out of Medeba, and took Euchanan and all that he had, and went their way with it. After this came word to Jonathan and Shimon his brother, that the children of Jambri made a great marriage, and were bringing the bride from Nadaptha with a great train, as being the daughter of one of the great princes of Canaan. Therefore they remembered Yochanan their brother, and went up and hid themselves under the covert of the mountain, where they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, there was much ado and a great carriage, and the bridegroom came forth, and his friends and brethren, to meet them with drums and instruments of music and many weapons. Then Jonathan and they that were with him rose up against them from the place where they lay in ambush, and made a slaughter of them in such sort as many fell down dead. And the remnant fled into the mountains, and they took all their spoils. Thus was the marriage turned into mourning, and the noise of their melody into lamentation. So when they had avenged fully the blood of their brother, they turned again to the marsh of the Jordan. Now when Bacchides heard thereof, he came on the Sabbath unto the banks of the Jordan with a great power. Then Jonathan said to his company, Let us go up now and fight for our lives, for it stands not with us today as in times past. For behold, the battle is before us and behind us, and the water of the Jordan on this side and that side, the marsh likewise and wood. Neither is there a place for us to turn aside. Wherefore cry ye now unto heaven, that ye may be delivered from the hand of your enemies. With that they joined battle, and Jonathan stretched forth his hand to smite Bacchides, but he turned back from him. Then Jonathan and they that were with him leapt into the Jordan, and swam over unto the other banks. Howbeit the others passed not over the Jordan unto them. So there were slain of Bacchides' side that day about 1,000 men. Afterward returned Bacchides to Jerusalem, and repaired the strong cities in Yehuda, the fort in Jericho and Yemen, and Bet Horon, and Bet El, and Timnah, Parathoni, and Tapuach. These did he strengthen with high walls, with gates and with bars, and in them he set a garrison, that they might work malice upon Yasharal. He fortified also the city of Bet Sur and Gazam, and the tower, and put forces in them, and provision of victuals. Besides, he took the chief men's sons in the country for hostages, and put them into the tower at Jerusalem to be kept. All right, y'all, we got about 20 more verses to read. It goes to 73. We have 54. Moreover, In the 150th and third year, in the second month, Alcimus commanded that the wall of the inner court of the sanctuary should be pulled down. He pulled down also the works of the prophets. Okay, babe. All right. And as he began to pull down, even that time was Alcimus plagued, and his enterprises hindered, for his mouth was stopped, and he was taken with a palsy, so that he could speak no more anything, nor give order concerning his house. So Alcimus died at that time with great torment. Now when Bacchides saw that Alcimus was dead, he returned to the king, whereupon the land of Yehuda was in rest 2 years. Then all of the wicked men... Okay, son. Love you. Then all the wicked men held a council, saying, Behold, Jonathan and his company are at ease, and dwell without care. Now therefore we will bring Bacchides hither, who shall take them all in one night. So they went and consulted with him. Then removed he, and came with a great host, and sent Sepharim privately to his adherents in Yehuda, that they should take Jonathan and those that were with him. Howbeit they could not, because their counsel was known unto them. Wherefore they took of the men of the country that were authors of that mischief, about 50 persons, and slew them. Afterward Jonathan and Shimon and they that were with him got away to Bet-Bessi, which is in the wilderness, and they repaired the decays thereof, and made it strong. Which thing, when Bacchides knew, he gathered together all his hosts, and sent word to them that were of Yehuda. Then went he and laid a siege against Bet-Bessi, and they fought against it a long season, and made engines of war. But Jonathan left his brother Shimon in the city, and went forth himself into the country, and with a certain number he went forth. And he smote Odomara and his brethren, and the children of Phaseron in their tent. And when he began to smite them, and came up with his forces, Shimon and his company went out of the city, and burned up the engines of war. And they fought against Bacchides, who was discomfited by them, and they afflicted him sore, for his counsel and travail was in vain. Wherefore he was very wroth at the wicked men that gave him counsel to come into the country, inasmuch as he slew many of them, and purposed to return into his own country. Whereof, when Jonathan had knowledge, he sent ambassadors unto him, to the end that he should make peace with him, and deliver them the prisoners. Which thing he accepted, and did according to his demands, and swore unto him that he would never do him harm all the days of his life. When therefore he had restored unto him the prisoners that he had taken aforetime out of the land of Yehuda, he returned and went his way into his own land, neither came he any more into their borders. Thus the sword ceased from Yasharal, but Jonathan dwelt in Michmash, and began to govern the people, and he destroyed the wicked men out of Yasharal. Marie Shalom. All right, beautiful people. So that was First Maccabees chapter 8 and chapter 9. Y'all see how long these are, right? That's why we took it down to 2. We have 30 minutes, so maybe we get in 2 chapters from Walk of the Spirit, Walk of Power today. All right, beautiful people. So let's go ahead and hop over here. Let me pull it up. Okay. We stopped at chapter 2. Okay, so remember it always starts like with this word of prophecy, so to speak. Okay. So enter in and know me by the Spirit, and I will take you from glory to glory, feeding you with an inheritance that causes you to know how to quench the hunger and the burnings inside, to know me after my power. I will show you these things, but you must enter into my presence and stay there until I have fed you with your ministry, saith the Spirit of grace. Okay, so this section is my personal journey to revelation knowledge. I didn't tap into God's plan for my own life until I was an adult. There was no one in my life as a child who could teach me how to do it. Then the next section is labeled The Beginnings. My mother was what I call a periodic alcoholic. She died in her early 50s with cirrhosis of the liver. My dad was a preacher's kid, but I didn't find that out until long after I had answered the call to ministry as an adult. He was a preacher's kid who went wild, spending most of his life in and out of jail. He came and went when I was little. When I was old enough to understand, Mom finally told me she ran him off when I was almost 2 years old because he would beat me so badly. I can remember hiding a toy plane under my bed. Mom had saved her grocery pennies to buy it for me. When my dad came around, I had to hide it. I knew that much. He was always threatening me, saying things like, "I'm going to shoot you with a gun full of salt." I can't remember much about the beatings. As I grew up, I had many other temporary fathers who came and went. I didn't know much about them either. Sometimes the neighbors, this is plucking my nerves. I'm sorry, y'all. This thing keep popping down. Okay. Sometimes the neighbors would come over and get me, my brother and my 2 sisters. They would scrub our faces, load us in the car, and take us to church. It was obvious that we were neglected. Our grandpa finally took us in. He made a workhorse out of me through my high school years, and when I say work, I mean work. By the time I entered into the United States Navy, I was in top shape. I had never worked out or done sit-ups or push-ups in my life, yet I won the arm wrestling championship on my ship. I was also asked to box for the Navy. All my physical strength and training came from Grandpa working me like an animal through my teenage years. Grandpa was from the old hard track school of thought in raising children. I never knew very much about the love of God or had anything to call my own. Nearly every chance Grandpa had, he told me, "You'll never amount to anything. Never. You're going to grow up to be no good, just like your old man Roberson." When I was 16 years old, a friend of mine, who was also a preacher's kid, convinced me to go to a Pentecostal church with him every weekend for the sole reason of meeting girls. After church, we would go out drinking. Well, the pastor's preaching didn't bother my friend at all, but it started to get to me. One night, I became so convicted that I went over to the pastor's house after service had ended. I knocked on the pastor's door. When he answered it, I told him, "I think there's something wrong with me." "That's conviction," the pastor replied. "What you need to do is accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior." So he told me to get down on my knees next to a chair, and then he led me in the sinner's prayer. I left the pastor's house feeling light and happy, and the next time I was out with my friends, I refused to drink with them. However, no one from church went after me to get me filled with the Holy Spirit or to help me grow in my spiritual walk. So my good intentions only lasted about 2 weeks, and then I returned to my partying lifestyle. I quit high school and left home when I was 17, never to come back. That's when I joined the Navy. Soon after I finished my term with the Navy, I came back to God at an ultra-holiness church. It was there that I met my future wife, Rosalie. These holiness people told me that my Heavenly Father was doing the same thing to me my natural father did to me, punishing me for making mistakes. They were teaching me legalism, but I didn't understand that. I thought to myself, well, I guess I lost one father and picked up another one. The next section is entitled The Sawmill Preacher. The first year after I got saved, I had trouble staying in church. But soon after marrying Rosalie, I was baptized in the Holy Ghost, and I never went back to my godless life again. I never wanted to go back. A few years later, we moved to a little town in Oregon called Lapine, where the only church was a little holiness church that was even more strict than the one we had left. There were no other churches or Christian meetings. I got a job in a sawmill and started preaching on the job. Everyone around me at the sawmill was living in sin, but God strengthened me to stand in the faith. Hell threw everything it could at me to cause me to turn away from God, but because of the Lord's upholding hand, I stood. Once in a while, a preacher would hold a revival in our area. When that happened, all 7 men who pulled the chain with me at the sawmill would come with me to the revival because I had worked on them so hard trying to persuade them to attend. The next section is called The Vision That Propelled Me into Ministry. At 30 years of age, I still live with the image that was built on the inside of me while growing up. I would never amount to anything. I deserved nothing but punishment. I was born again, and I had such a strong hunger and thirst for God. I knew in my heart that I was called to preach the gospel, but I couldn't see how He could or would ever use me. I was a holiness boy, lost in legalism. But I loved God with all my heart, and He had mercy on my soul. He gave me a vision that launched me into full-time ministry. It wasn't something I experienced because I ate too late at night. It was real. I'll never forget it. We had moved a couple of times and were living in a little town called Oak Ridge, where I had continued to work in the local sawmill. Early one morning, I woke up in the presence of God. I opened my eyes, expecting to see my familiar bedroom. Instead, I saw a big auditorium. There were several wheelchair cases on the platform. I was 3 rows back on the left. An associate pastor was conducting a worship service. Something was electrifying about the meeting, and somehow I knew it was my meeting. The associate pastor returned to the pulpit after the praise and worship ended and said, "Now, our evangelist." As he spoke, he looked right at me to respond. I had my Bible open. In fact, I had it open to Jude 20 and 21. For y'all, Jude is just one book. I caught myself when I was about to say chapter. Jude verses 20 and 21. The passage that would later launch our ministry. And this is what it says. "But ye, beloved, building up yourselves on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Ghost, keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life." But as I started to stand up, the associate pastor turned and pointed to the stage curtain. A blonde-haired woman came out into the platform. It was obvious that she was full of God's love and anointing. The power of the Holy Spirit flowed out of her like honey. It was so thick and sweet you could almost cut it. I sank back into my chair in utter disbelief. I knew it was supposed to be my meeting. The woman took the microphone and ministered the grace of God beautifully. Then God's power fell, and all the people got up out of their wheelchairs. The altar filled with people confessing Jesus as Savior. The whole service was full of power and anointing. When it was all over, the rest of the crowd disappeared, and it was just me and this woman in the auditorium. Then she looked directly at me and said, "I don't know why God has given me this kind of ministry. One of you men must have failed." I came out of the vision shaking. I woke Rosalie and told her everything that I had witnessed in the vision. I decided that I couldn't live the way I had been living anymore. Torn between my call to preach and my deep feelings of unworthiness, I was being beaten from the inside out. I told my wife, "I have to answer the call to the ministry, sink, swim, or drown. If we eat beans, sleep under a tree, or dress the kids in gunny sacks, will you still go with me?" Rosalie said yes. So together that morning, she and I decided that no matter what it took, we would press into God. 2 weeks later, I resigned my job to go full-time into the ministry. The next section is called the prayer closet. Having quit my job at the lumber mill, I didn't know what to do with my time. Then I thought of the little church Rosalie and I had started just a few months before. Although I had started the church, I asked a minister from another town to come every week to preach. At that time, I still didn't have the courage to preach myself. In the old bowling alley where we were holding services, I had recently partitioned off an 8x8 area that had once been a concession stand, making it into a tiny nursery. I decided that I would use the little nursery area as my prayer closet. I figured somehow that if I prayed the same amount of time of hours that I normally worked, God would pay me by providing for our needs. I had no idea how hard it would be to carry out my decision to pray 8 hours a day. The first morning, I went into the closet, closed the door, got down on my knees, and started to pray in English. "Oh God, now I'm in a full-time ministry. Oh God, keep our cupboards full. Don't let our children starve. Use me. God, please use me." I spent a lot of time begging God. I was just a holiness boy who had learned almost nothing about faith yet. I prayed for everything I could think of. I prayed for all the missionaries around the world that I knew about. I even spent some time cursing the cockroaches in that closet, commanding them to die in Jesus' name. But despite my efforts, I ran out of things to pray in just 15 minutes. So just to survive the long hours that stretched in front of me, for which I had committed to pray, I switched to praying in tongues. I didn't start praying in tongues because I knew it was a good thing to do. The truth is, I didn't even know if it was scripturally legal. Some holiness people had told me that I couldn't pray in tongues anytime I wanted to. Then I had heard from others that it was okay to use tongues as a prayer language. I wasn't sure which belief was right. All I knew was that I had to stay in the closet because I had resigned my job. So I began to pray in tongues that first day in the closet just to kill the hours. Finally, the 10 o'clock meal whistle blew. It was coffee break time. I hurried down to the coffee shop, ate a few donuts, and ran back to my prayer closet. In my mind, I had to be in position for prayer again in 15 minutes, the same time the meal workers started their work again. I kept on praying in tongues. I prayed for what seemed to be several hours, but it wasn't even noon yet. Then the scream of the meal whistle brought me back to the reality of my friend's daily schedule and the radical choice I had made for myself. It was lunch break for the workers at the mill, and the darkness of the closet seemed to close in on me. My former fellow workers had spent the last 4 hours in the sunlight, cutting and shaping wood that would be shipped all over the world. At the sound of the whistle, everyone would take their lunch boxes out and sit on the benches, ready to eat, relax, and tell jokes. I knew what the men were doing, but I wasn't with them. Did I really believe God? Would this really work? I had to believe it would. The next section is entitled Memories of the Search for Answers. My mind drifted back to the late evening service at the Pentecostal church where I first listened with a mixture of apprehension and excitement to the revelation of the baptism in the Holy Spirit and the gift of tongues that accompanied the experience. Rosalie and I discussed what we had heard all the way home as our 3 young sons slept huddled together in the back seat of our Volkswagen Bug. Rosalie had received the baptism of the Holy Spirit in her late teens. I began to wonder if this experience could be my answer to a life of frustration and repeated repentance for sins I couldn't seem to shake. It seemed that for so many Christians, transformation occurred immediately after they were born again. Was this true? And if so, why did it seem so difficult for me to change? Could a prayer language prayed through me by the Holy Spirit be the answer I needed to cross over that invisible line and truly become an overcomer? Soon afterward, I came home to Rosalie and the boys after a dismal evening of struggling that had resulted in spiritual and personal failure. The look of disappointment on Rosalie's face was enough to drive out the lingering influence of the few drinks I had shared with the guys. A strong sense of conviction rose up on the inside of me. I was on the brink of settling into self-pity and despair. Rosalie tucked the children into bed as I sat in the kitchen, my head hung in shame and remorse. Then she walked over to me and silently took my hands in hers as if she was to say she is with me in this struggle. From that night on, Rosalie and I began to pray together more often, and my desire to know more about the baptism in the Holy Spirit continued to grow. We talked about this gift often. I was so hungry to really to know God, so hungry for the answers to my many questions. By then, I knew about Hebrews 11:6, which says, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him." Could this praying in the Spirit be a part of the diligently seeking God? Now, as I knelt in that closet praying in tongues, the answer to that question seemed all the more important. I returned from my world of memories thinking, what am I doing in this little closet when by all standards I should be putting in my 8 hours at the local lumber mill? Was I crazy, or had I begun a true adventure into the deep waters of God? The next section is called Putting in My Time with God. The answers to these questions were still in the future as I began this first day in the prayer closet, putting in my time with God. My mind swirled with questions. doubts, and anxiety as I prayed in the Spirit. Could a man really go deeper into God on purpose just because he wanted to? Let me tell you, those hours in that closet were long. I would pray in tongues for what seemed like an hour, and then I would look at my watch. Oh no, it's only been 5 minutes. So I started praying again. The next few months found me reporting to my prayer closet just as before I would have reported to the lumberyard. When the mill whistle signaled the start of each workday, I was always in position on my knees, ready to pray. Every day the hours just dragged by, but I stayed with it. I memorized every discoloration on the carpet and the wall. I got to know that prayer closet so well that even today I could still take a pencil and paper and draw it in minute detail. I felt like I was in a prison. From my closet, I could smell burning wood as the saws split the tall trees. I could picture my friends dipping into their lunch pails full to the brim and sipping steaming cups of coffee. One day, I was having a particularly difficult time of it. Why had I quit my job to do this? What did this supposedly supernatural language accomplish anyway? My spirit man rose up and spoke the word to my wavering emotions. God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Hebrews 11:6. Then through my mind flashed a continuous series of pictures of my seemingly endless failures. I found myself choking on the emotions that those memories brought up. Oh God, I cried, let that word be true. Gradually, peace began to calm my troubled mind. God had not told me to quit my job and pray in the Spirit for 8 hours every day. It was a decision I made from a place of desperation. I wanted more of God, but I wasn't sure how to find it. From reading the Word, I had learned that my prayer language was given for my edification and that I could pray out mysteries, but what I didn't have a grasp of was what I didn't have a grasp of let me go all the way back. Hold on. From reading the Word, I had learned that my prayer language was given for my edification and that I could pray out mysteries, but I didn't have a grasp of what those truths really meant. Still, I was determined that if it was possible for me to edify myself by praying in tongues until my mind was able to receive divine mysteries, that was what I was going to do. The next section is entitled A Welcome Break. So I kept on praying, hour after slow hour, day after long day. About 2 months dragged by. Let me just say something. How many of y'all would have still kept up with it after 2 months of seeing no results? I'm telling you, it's like this momentum that's building, right? And when I tell my stories, I'll tell you like how when I started in 2014 and then I started, it's a process, but it does build up. It's like a well filling up with water, right? It's a process. If you don't stop, you're going to hit the water. Okay. So I kept on praying hour after slow hour, day after long day. About 2 months dragged by. Then a woman whom I had met at a charismatic Bible study heard about what I was doing. She came over to the church one day and knocked on my closet door. Brother Roberson, she called. I hear you've been praying all these long hours and days. Yes, ma'am. I wanted to know, she said, can you tell any difference? Do you mean the difference in my walk with God or what? I asked. No, I just wanted to know, can you tell any difference? As a matter of fact, I can, I answered. Would you mind sharing it? Not at all, I said. My tongue is tired, my throat is dry, and my chin is weary. She nervously replied, excuse me, I have to go. And that was the end of that conversation. Another month dragged by. I had been locked up in that closet praying for 3 months. Then the same woman came back and knocked on the closet door. Brother Roberson, she said, you know the church that I go to? Yes, ma'am, I do. You know that they don't believe in speaking in tongues? Yes, I know that. Well, my church is holding a lay witness meeting this weekend where lay people from several states gather together to tell the good things God has done for them. Would you like to come? I thought, you better believe I'd like to come. I would use any excuse to get out of this closet. I told the woman, I'll meet you there. So I ran home, changed my clothes, and hurried to the house where the people were holding a morning Bible study. I arrived late for the meeting, so I didn't know that the elderly woman who was sitting next to me had walked in using a crutch, which someone had then put in the nearby corner. I had no idea the woman was lame in her leg. I sat there, waiting for the speaker to begin his message. I was so excited. I had been locked up in a prayer closet for 3 months. Now I was not only with other people, but I was going to hear a real live message taught by a real live person. I could hardly wait. Finally, the man stood up to speak, holding a huge stack of notes. If his notes had been a scroll, it could have been rolled out to the back of the house. He hadn't spoken very long before he had put the new meaning on not being filled with the Holy Ghost. With elaborate language and a stiff monotone voice, the man lectured about Jesus, the great celestial go-between, the troubled waters of mankind, and the omnipotent God. I sat there in my chair thinking, what did I get myself into? This is terrible. I'd rather be back in my prayer closet. The next section is entitled, God Shows Up Unexpectedly. My mind floated in and out of the meeting. I didn't know what to do with myself. For excitement, I started to shake my coffee cup so I could watch the coffee rings ripple to the edge of the cup. Out of sheer boredom, I looked over at this elderly lady next to me. I had no idea what was going to happen. I felt no anointing. I felt nothing. But when I looked at this woman, suddenly I saw suspended between me and her what looked like an X-ray of someone's hip socket. The socket had a dark substance all around the ball joint, extending 3 to 4 inches down the leg. I almost dropped my cup in astonishment. I blinked, but the X-ray picture remained before my eyes. I looked around to see if anybody else could see what I was seeing. Apparently, no one could. As I sat there looking at this X-ray, I started praying. Oh God, what is this? Do you want me to pray for this woman? What in the world do you want me to do? God remained absolutely silent. Later, when I was sharing this testimony during the service, the Lord spoke to my spirit and said, Son, do you want to know why I didn't speak to you at that time? Why I let you go on and disturb the service? Because if I wasn't listening to that man teach, why should I make you listen? That was a revelation in itself. So I leaned over to this elderly lady and said, Ma'am, do you have trouble with your hip? She turned around and studied me for a long moment. All of a sudden, the word arthritis jumped out of my spirit. I blurted out, it's arthritis in your right hip. She studied me for another long moment and then said, That's what the doctor tells me, young man. I exclaimed, Glory to God. Well, I beg your pardon, she said. Oh, God wants to heal you, ma'am. May I pray for you? The elderly woman just kept studying me. Now remember, this church didn't believe in speaking with other tongues. So the woman, at my request, meant that at some time in the course of my day, I would bow my head and remember her in prayer. But that's not what prayer meant to me. I was a bench jumping, chair leaping, loud shouting Pentecostal. I believe the louder I shouted, the more power I generated. Finally, the elder lady answered, Yes, you may pray for me. As soon as she said that, I leapt out of my chair, knelt down in front of her, grabbed both her ankles and pulled them towards me. Meanwhile, that golden-tongued orator was still orating. Then I looked down at her feet and thought, oh, one leg was 6 inches shorter than the other. Oh no, this is horrible, I thought. I've never seen this kind of miracle this woman needs. I was too scared to watch. So I closed my eyes and shouted, In the name of Jesus, and started praying in the strongest, hardest, most ultra holiness, reading too fast. I was too scared to watch, and so I closed my eyes, shouted, In the name of Jesus, and I started praying the strongest, hardest, most ultra holiness type of prayer I could think of. Witnesses to the scene later told me that the very first mention of the mighty name, the woman's shorter leg cracked and popped, then it suddenly grew out until it was even with the other leg. The woman had been instantly, totally healed, but I didn't know that. I still had my eyes closed, and I was praying my strongest prayer. And in my zeal, I almost wrestled that lady off her chair onto the floor before the others could get me to let go of her ankles. But God didn't need my help. He popped that leg out without me even realizing it. When I finally opened my eyes and saw the miracle, I was as shocked as everyone else. About that time, I started to pray for the woman. The man who was speaking grabbed his associate and whispered to him, "Go get that guy and break it up." I really don't blame him. I was destroying his service with my loud praying. The associate started toward all the commotion, and according to those who had witnessed the scene, reached us just in time to see the miracle. He was just about to grab me when he saw the woman's short legs suddenly grow out 6 inches. So instead of breaking up the disturbance, this man was struck dumb with amazement. He had never seen a miracle before. He didn't even speak in tongues. When it came to the supernatural, this man didn't believe in hardly anything. So when he saw the miracle, he was speechless. Talk about God's timing. Then the golden-tongued orator ended his message with the question, what is the most outstanding sequence of events that could possibly be attributed to the God factor in your life? While everyone else was wondering what that meant, the associate answered the man's question by pointing over to the healed elderly woman and sputtering, "Over here!" The healing of this elderly woman was certainly the most outstanding sequence of events he had ever seen. After the service, the speaker came over to the little elderly lady and tried to tell her, "Ma'am, God doesn't perform miracles in this day and age." But the elderly woman replied, "You want to bet, Sonny? You want to bet?" Then she grabbed her crutch and started walking around the room. She swung that crutch back and forth, using it to hold people off while she showed them how well her healed hip was working. After the house meeting, the congregation all attended a special banquet at the church. For some reason, they didn't invite me. I wonder why. But God didn't need me to be invited for his purposes to be fulfilled. The elderly lady went. Before the people in charge could do anything, that little lady jumped up and gave her testimony at the banquet. After she finished, she shouted, "And what God did for me, he'll do for you." The place went crazy with excitement. Later, a woman attending the banquet sought out the elderly lady. This woman had been in a car accident and was now unable to bend over. "Do you think God would heal me?" she asked. The elderly lady replied, "I think he would. Let's call that man who prayed for me." By that time, I had gone home, changed clothes, and I was busy working in the yard. The phone rang, and it was the elderly lady who had just received the miracle. She explained the other woman's condition and asked if they could come over so I could pray for the woman. I was about to say, "You can bring her and anyone else you can get your hands on." I was still lost in the Holy Ghost. But then the Holy Spirit spoke to my spirit very loudly. "Go to the main auditorium of the church." So I told the woman, "I'll meet you and your friends at the church." It became very quiet on the other end of the line. After a while, I heard the two women whispering to each other. Then the elderly lady asked me, Then the elderly lady said to me, "Okay, we'll meet you out in front of the church." When I arrived at the church, the two women met me and tried to take me to a room in the church basement away from everyone else. But I kept saying what the Holy Ghost was saying to my spirit, the main auditorium. "We have to go to the main auditorium." Finally, the ladies gave up and took me to the main auditorium, where people were still standing around in little circles, fellowshipping with each other. Well, it said fellowshipping together. I stood there looking at the people. I didn't know what to do. I was only there because I was obeying the Holy Ghost. Then the associate who had witnessed the miracle said, I think this man wants to say something." I thought, I do. I had never preached before. I was afraid. Everyone courteously looked at me. Timidly, I began to give the elderly woman's testimony. Suddenly, the Holy Ghost fell on me, and I was caught up in the awesome, powerful presence of God. The gift of faith came on me, although at that time I didn't understand that. and I heard myself saying things that were so good that I knew it couldn't be me preaching. I wasn't that smart. I wanted to step out of my body and take notes. Then, while the gift of faith was still in operation, I looked over at one young man. As I walked over to him, suddenly his shoulder section became transparent like an X-ray, and in the spirit I saw the shoulder joint and the problem with it. The young man could only lift his arm a little ways. I said to the young man, "Your shoulder is going to be healed." I got closer to him. The closer I got to him, the more horrified he looked. His eyes got big, and he leaned as far away from me as he could, but it didn't do him any good. I ran over to him and grabbed him by the wrist, and then I said, "In the name of Jesus," and jerked his arm straight up in the air. The young man screamed as his arm went up. Then he looked at me in amazement and said, "Why didn't it hurt?" "You bet it didn't hurt," I replied. You see, the gift of faith was on me. I had the mind of God. I was acting with the faith of God, who had totally dislodged that frozen shoulder. Now, let me interject something here, what I found out. Although, like I said, this is a Christian guy, and he's using Christian terms, and he's saying, "In the name of Jesus," it wasn't the name of Jesus that was causing these things to happen. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to see. For people who still might be stuck on Jesus or in Yeshua's name, I'm telling you, it's not that name. It's being connected to the power source yourself, where you then begin to walk in that authority, and all the gifts begin to operate and flow through you. You don't need a middleman. When you're disciplined and you're diligent and spending that time, I'm telling you from what I know, guys, go test it. If you're still in the habit of saying in Jesus' name and or whatever, I ain't trying to make y'all do nothing, but I'm saying at least go test it. When me and my sister began to test this a few years ago, and I mentioned this before, we decided on purpose, and because we had transitioned from saying in Jesus' name to saying in Yeshua's name, then once we got a little bit more understanding, we said in Yahusha's name. But then it was like, wait a minute, I think this is going to work without even saying that name, period. We're connected to Yah. If Yah is giving us his authority, why don't we just say, if we're going to say it, why don't we just say, just to see if it works? So we stopped using that name and we just started using Yah's name alone, right? Boy, if things didn't happen even faster for us, I'm like, holy crap. Not that holiness is crap, but you'll get it, right? That's just one of my sins. I was like, oh my gosh, this works. That's when once I began to test things and really see, I'm like, oh, this is going to work regardless. Even if I don't, and I've even got to the point where I didn't use Yahuwah's name simply because I know who he is and I know the authority and power that I walk in. I can just say and let it be done and go about my day, and it will happen, right? Because I understand, right? I remove all the crutches, so to speak. People call them crutches or whatever. As you get older, you learn how to. You don't need training aids, so to speak, anymore, right? Not that Yahuwah or his name is a training aid, right? And all that we should do in his name. But when you know, just like in military, right? We have different ranks, and we know that those who are in higher ranks in a leadership, whether a captain, if the captain gives the lieutenant his power, ain't nobody gonna question the lieutenant, right? The lieutenant, we know that lieutenant and everybody in higher ranks above us has the authority of the captain backing them. So we're going to obey them just like we obey the captain, right? We obey them just like the captain. And they walk in that authority. They don't go say, look, in the captain's name, do this. Or in the lieutenant's name, do this. Or your supervisor, don't be like, in the manager's name, do this. No, I'm the captain now. Get this done. And we obey just like it was the captain. It's the same thing, right? When you walk in it, you don't have to keep throwing your credentials out there, or I got the authority in Yah's name, or in my supervisor's name, or in my manager's name, or in the lieutenant's name, or in the captain's name. I'm the captain now. I'm in charge, right? It works the same way. I'm telling you, you ain't got to believe me, but go test it. All right, listen. The young man screamed as his arm went up. Then he looked at me in amazement and said, why didn't it hurt? You bet it didn't hurt, I replied. You see, the gift of faith was on me. I had the mind of God. I was acting on the faith of God who had totally dislodged that frozen shoulder. Later that night, when the gift of faith wasn't in operation anymore, I lay in bed thinking, Roberson, you are so stupid. What if you had broken that man's arm? I didn't know then that when the gift of faith is in operation, a person thinks like God thinks, and he may do the things that just don't make sense in a natural. And then the woman who couldn't bend her back ran over to me. That same supernatural faith was still on me. I put my hand on the back of her neck and bent her down until she touched her toes. She was instantly healed by the power of God. The miracles continued. Finally, the elders came from every quarter of the church and said, we're breaking this up. This man is turning this into a holy rolling, swinging from the chandelier meeting, and we're not going to have this. But before they could do much of anything, I yelled out, does anybody want what I got? Immediately, all the youth came running over to me, and I began to pray for them, and they all started getting filled with the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues and falling down under the power of God. The adults didn't know what was going on. They went around taking the young people's pulses, asking them, are you okay? Most of those young people are still serving God today. Some have graduated from Bible school. People were speaking in tongues all over the auditorium, and the elders were in a frenzy. While they tried to get the situation back under control, I slipped out a side door. I was so lost in the spirit, I hardly knew where I was. I could hardly walk. I staggered down the sidewalk a little ways until I found an iron post that supported the church. I leaned against that post and cried like a baby. God had just used me. Because of my background, my mind could not fathom the fact that the God of the universe, the one whom all the ultra holiness people had told me dealt out so much punishment, will occupy the same room with me and perform a miracle through me. I can't explain what it felt like. You see, I knew my shortcomings. I knew the real me. To think that God was working with me and through me to establish his kingdom here on earth was almost more than I could fathom. Why would he use one such as me? All of my born again, Holy Ghost filled years, I had known that I had God's call on my life. And I had always been so hungry to know him after his power. But no one could tell me how to walk into the power of God on purpose. No one. They could only give me vague generalities that didn't satisfy that deep hunger. Catherine Kuhlman, oh, look. How do you start the prayer? Linda, because I took a lot of time explaining that the other day. When we're done here in the comment section, I'm going to post. I'm going to tag you in it. I hope I can tag you. If we're not friends, I may not be able to tag you, but if I can't tag you, I'm going to send you a friend request. That way you can see me tag you in it. But if you go to the page, I make the videos public, so you should be able to see it either way. But I'll post the video where I explained it in detail. That video, started, I think it was Monday's video. The one with paranormal in the title, and the one the next day, which was 2 hours. That one for paranormal was almost 2 hours. The day after that, it was 2 hours. And both of those videos, the one for the paranormal one, I have the notes in there, started at about, I think it's the 23-minute mark. And then the one for the next day, the next couple days, started at the hour mark, because it'll skip the morning reading and it'll get right into me explaining that after even was reading a little book or whatever. But I give you detail on how to do it. But Dana, she said, this reminds me of Catherine Kuhlman. She would just walk into a room and lift up her hands and people were healed. She must have tapped in. Yes, she did. I used to study Catherine Kuhlman, right? In my early years when I started doing more testing of this, and people that had miracles happen, actual miracles, not talking about some of the crazy men, because there are some ministries out there with a bunch of crazy men and fake miracles and stuff, and There ain't no end to their shenanigans. But I'm talking about the real authentic ones, like Catherine Kuhlman, and then you got Azusa Street. What's his name? I know his name. I got so many books on Azusa Street and the reports and things that happened and the people that were actually there that are still alive today. I'm like, and I found something. There was a common thread with real live healing miracles happened. Do you know what no, not Carlton Pearson, Dana, not Carlton Pearson. Yesav Shalom. Go back to the video when somebody asked me about that, when they say speaking in tongues is a New Testament thing. I'm telling you, it's not just a New Testament thing. Although, because somebody they specifically, and I believe it was Gil specifically asked me, can tongues be found in the Torah? Go back and watch that video where I show you exactly where it's shown at, right? When you begin to really study Torah, Yahuwah begins to illuminate things in the scripture for you, right? And you can actually find it back there, right? And it's not, although people's personality gets them all super excited and stuff, but it actually brings self-control over you, and it teaches you things, and it connects you to Yah. So go back and check out that video. Look at it, and then if you still don't believe, test it. That's why I tell everybody, you don't believe it, go test it. William Seymour. Yes, William Seymour is his name, Dana. But what he used to do, there is a common thread what they used to do to tap into the presence of Yah. And to make a long story short, it was praying in other tongues, right? You remember what William Seymour used to do before the services would start? That was his. Go back and watch the video, yes. That's what I said, bro. Go back and watch the video. You say you check, it's not in the Torah, but go back. And I'm going to show you where it's set, my G. Go back and check. No, but then let's talk about it. And then go test it. Look, so William Seymour, he used to take a cardboard box, and put it on his head, right? Say if this was a bigger box, he used to take it and put it on his head. Hold on. I wish I had an Amazon box. Hold on. Look, hold on. I'm going to just use my husband's lunch bag. Oh, look, all them Amazon boxes. Just pretend it's brown, right? So just pretend it's a box. Seriously, no joke. He used to go before the meetings, he would sit over in the corner on the pulpit and put the box on his head. People looking around like, what is this fool doing? Right? And I used to be like, okay, why is he putting a box on his head? Is it really necessary for him to do that, right? Then I understood something. And this wasn't until recently as I began to really look into meditation, and because Yahuwah teaches us to meditate on his word, his laws and principles, right? And being able to quiet yourself, being able to shut out the noises around you. So that's what he was doing, right? Because if you come into a service, right, remove those distractions. That's why he used the box, right? He used the box, but it's the same principle I'm trying to teach you as we go along on how to do that. And praying in tongues will help you. Praying in that language will help you to do that. It literally, if you stick to it and you do it, you're going to begin to notice a change. You're really going to begin to notice a change, right? So instead of arguing, that's why I say we test the principles. Let's not argue about it until we actually genuinely test it. Don't test it to prove me wrong or somebody else wrong. Test it to really see if it's a tool that Yah has given to us to help us grow and connect back to him. And I'm telling you, you're going to be quite amazed at what you find out, right? So when you're having conversations with people, don't have it with them just to prove them wrong because you think you know. Because you don't know everything, just like I don't know everything. But I can tell you one thing that I do know, and the experiences that I've had and that I understand, you can't negate that. And until you try it, we really can't have a conversation about it for real, because you haven't put in the discipline and the time to really go test it to see if it's true, right? And a lot of people, when they go researching things to prove people wrong, they end up being pulled to their side, so to speak, because they find out, wait a minute, what you're saying has some credibility to it, right? But he used the box over his head to remove all those distractions. And while he was there, he would meditate, whether he was quiet or he was praying in tongues, because it would keep the gifts activated. right? While people out in the congregation looking all crazy and, like my mama say, looking all wise and otherwise, he would stay focused, right? And the gifts would rest upon him, right? So there are some things that we practice and things that we did by default. Like when we were still in church, and my husband, I wish he was here, he could tell you about, I should let him tell that story, but kind of give you the gist of it. Before we had started our own company, and we were still going to this church where we had actually got this book from, and the pastor at that time, he used to talk about praying in tongues a lot. He said, use this gift often, right? And so he would share some of the things about the gift of faith and all those things that will come upon you when you prayed often this way, and how the presence of God would just show up, because he would actually have services where people would get healed, right? So so that's what we really started hearing a lot about it at. And then the guy from India, he came and he bought this book, and kind of like what we're reading now, which has everything kind of like literally laid out where you can go test it yourself. But my husband, he was working at this particular job, and he was on a route with one of the guys whom he got pretty close with. You know, they began to share like their personal lives with one another, and he shared that his wife had a drug problem, right? But this particular time, and she was fighting it. They was going to church and everything, but she couldn't seem to shake it, right? And so she would have these weekends where she would binge out, you know, and she would be somewhere, he couldn't find his wife. And it is a really sweet guy, you know. But I mean, just knowing him, you wouldn't think like he would like literally break down, because he really loved his wife. He really wanted to help her get free. So by us being in the church at this time and kind of learning about this, and my husband, because my husband prays in tongues, right? I probably pray more than him, but at this time he was kind of, because my husband was the pastor's armor bearer, right? So he was hearing a lot more stuff, you know, from the pastor at that time than what I was, you know. So when they would have little meetings or things at the church, you know, my husband, to prepare himself, he would spend the day, like if the pastor was going to have like a healing meeting or something, and my husband was going to be the armor bearer, help him. My husband would prepare himself the day before, and he would spend the day in prayer, praying in tongues and everything, right? So he began to feel some of these electrifying things that was happening while he was praying in tongues. And at that time, my husband, he was having a hard time with giving up a couple things. And by doing that, he noticed the change in himself, to where he was like, Pam, he was like, something is really happening. He said, because when I pray in tongues, he said, it gives me strength to fight against this particular thing, right? And I kid you not, it really does, y'all. Like I said, until you try it and test it, and don't give up. Like he said, he didn't see results till he was 3 months in, right? So I'm saying, don't give up. At least give it up. I would say give it a good year. Focus, dedication. Now, I promise you from my own personal experience, in a year, you will be a totally different person, for the better, right? But so this particular, I think it was a Friday. Was it a Friday? It was a Friday. He came to work. He told him what was going on. And his wife had actually left the night before. He said he hadn't seen his wife. No. Yeah, she had left on a Thursday, but they were working on a Saturday. It was a Saturday, and they were out, and he was still coming to work. You know, his wife wasn't answering her cell phone or whatever, so he was thinking she was laid up somewhere high, or he was thinking that she probably could have killed her this time, right? So what happened? This Saturday, she had left on a Thursday. Her husband hadn't seen her since Thursday night. Couldn't find her. He was out looking for her. He was coming to work a mess. And no, this particular time, Saturday, James said he just broke down. He was crying. James didn't know what to do, because he's like a manly man. Like my husband is a manly man, right? But he loves his wife. Couldn't find his wife. Nobody had seen her. He knew what she was dealing with. And he didn't know if this was the weekend that her life had been taken by the drugs or whatever, right? So my husband, while they was there, he stopped the truck. They pulled over into a park. I think it was like the parking lot of Walmart. Was it Walmart? No, it was that Kmart where we used to live at. Yeah, it was at Kmart. They pulled over, and my husband said he prayed for him, right? You know, he was just weeping and crying and stuff, and my husband just kind of asked for a miracle because he had never really dealt with that. I have like pray for anybody, he said, but he felt led to pray for him at that time. So he pulled the truck over and he prayed for him and everything. You know, he was, man, bawling his eyes out, you know. So, but after they had done, he said they was pulled over probably for about 30 minutes. They had to get back on their route, you know. So as they was going, about 20 minutes later, they drove and found they weren't looking for his wife, but his wife was actually out on like the main street walking down the, it was like not a highway, but it's like a main street. You know how you got like 3 lane, like through the city, you got like 3 lanes on this side going in this direction, and then you got a median, and you got the other lanes. It was one of those main streets like Ward Boulevard, to where the streets separate and you got more lanes. That's where they saw her at. And it was coming up to a big intersection, and he looked and he said, "There go my wife." And so James, he like skirt, but he got over, jumped out the truck, and you could tell that from what my husband explained, she was probably somewhere with, you know, just hungover or whatever. And so he grabbed his wife out there. James said cars passing by, looking at them and everything. And so James said, "Man, put her in the truck." He said, "We'll take her home." So they got her in the truck. They got her to the house. And before they left there, he asked my husband to pray for his wife, right? And the whole reason why I'm telling you this. And my husband, he was like, "Okay, I'm going to pray for her." And what he explained to me at that time, blew my friggin' mind. He said, okay, I'm gonna pray for her. He said, you mind like if because he asked, because this is this man's wife, I'll hold both of your hands. He said, put both your hands on her if you need to. He said, well, okay. And so my husband just kind of did what he saw our pastor do at the time. And he took one of her hands, and then he took his other hand and he put it on her head, and he began to pray for her. And what happened, what my husband explains, sounded to me like an exorcism. I'm like, what happened? So he began to pray for her, and he said she contorted, but not like contorted where the devil came out. I mean, well, not where like the devil began to talk to her, but like whatever spirit or whatever had her bound, my husband saw it and it came out of her. And afterwards, all them drugs that she had been high on that was still in her system, they came out of her like right there. My husband backed up, he didn't know what to do. So he said he just kept praying in tongues, and he wasn't praying out loud. He was just quietly in his head trying to take in all that was going on, because he didn't know if his wife was going to drop dead or if he was going to get taken to jail, because what's about to happen to her. But what in the world? Really? First of all, it's a bag of popcorn. You running down here screaming bloody murder. You are not the popcorn king, the keeper of the popcorn. All right? Go upstairs. You better unfold your arms and blow that air out your body. Get out my kitchen.
So I know that's gone.
Why are you still talking? Why are you still talking, Joshua? Go upstairs.
I get hurt.
Little girl. Why are you running through here screaming bloody murder? Well, I say it's never a dull moment here in my house. Give me this. Fighting over a bag of popcorn. Bella, chill out. Go on over there. And why was you and your brother on your stuff? You knew he said don't take it. My mama here. They fighting over these popcorn bags that you gave Bella the other day. Look, okay. Hold on. Okay, so, but anyway, where we at? We had an hour and 24 minutes. So I finish this chapter. Hold on. So, but from that day, to make a long story short, from that day, every time he talks to him, when he see him, he said from that day, he said his wife has never touched drugs again. right? She never touched drugs again. So as far as we know, and he lost contact with him for a few years, and then he saw him, I want to say, maybe almost 3 years ago. He saw him while he was out shopping, and they caught up for a few minutes and everything. He asked about his wife. He said, from that day, he said, my wife has been completely free. She's never touched drugs ever again. Yes, baby.
Should I press this, or this?
Just put it in and press 2 3 times. Press 2 2 2 and hit start. So now I know I shared all that because I said I'm gonna start sharing some stuff that happened when we use it, right? Sometimes if you just get somebody trying to teach you or talk about it and you personally don't go test it, then it's easy to just chuck it all to the wind. Press clear. Yes, press clear. Now press 2. Press 2. Press 2. Press start. Stop it. You didn't press 22 minutes and 22 seconds. End it, clear it. Only press it 3 times. 2. 2. 2. Start. There you go. All right. So, but that I know to be true, right? When you test it, right? So like I said, in Christianity, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because it's not just a Christian principle, and it's not Jesus that you're connecting to. You're actually tapping into the frequency, or to the whatever you want to call it. You're tapping in to Yah himself, where you become a channel, so to speak, where things can flow through you, just like you get divine understanding and wisdom about things, or things like, like that really happens for those people who tap in, whether you're taught that principle in church or you're taught it in the Eastern world somewhere. But I'm telling you, the principle works, right? So that's why I said we're going to walk through these different books that's showing you about this, and we're going to get it from different perspectives. We're getting from a Christian perspective and how they use it, but the same thing is happening. It's happening over the other world. And we're going to get a engineer, or he's a nuclear physicist that doesn't have anything to do with religion at all, but he's simply by testing scientific method tested this principle that happened upon him, and he gives you the shares with you the experiences and things that happened to his life, how his wisdom just increased by using this on purpose. And then we're gonna go back to the Ancient of Days, and we're gonna show you how ancient Egypt used it, right? And show you how it helped them. And then after we do that, although I didn't give you the name of that book yet, the one that we're going to read from there, we're going to show you how India uses that. Right now, when you got teachings coming from India, from people that's teaching about yoga, that doesn't teach you the ancient teachings on what that really is. You hear yoga today, like I say, you think it's just a bunch of exercises, and that falls into the realm of hatha yoga, right? Where it's just talking about exercising the body and disciplining the body. And that's not what yoga is. The definition of yoga is the science of the mind, right? And that's what you tap into. That's your mind. Put that back. That's what you tap into.
Mom, this is small ice cream?
No, put that back where you got it from. It doesn't belong to me. That must be Jeremiah's.
In there?
Yeah. So when it teaches you about this, so I want to show you from the different areas so you can see. That's when I'm like, okay, we're going to de-churchify some stuff, because there are principles that work outside the church and work with other people, whether you want to call them a heathen, hypocrite, or whatever you want to call them. If they use the principle, it's going to work, because it's a universal law that when you quiet yourself and get rid of all the distractions around you and inside of you, you can tap into the source of your life, Yah himself, whether you want to call him the Great Spirit, the Most Holy, the Most High, right? That's the road we're taking, so you can see, so you can enrich your personal life, right? Your spiritual life, and you get the benefits of it. Right? Okay. Oh, yeah. Hour 29. Okay, let me finish these last couple paragraphs, because it is the end of chapter 2, and then we'll pause when we get to chapter 3. Okay, so the last, the next section is called Uncovering a Spiritual Law by Accident. Then, as I leaned against that post, all of a sudden, prophecy began to flow, and I received the revelation knowledge my heart had been seeking all along. I didn't know enough to speak out loud what I heard in my spirit. The Holy Spirit said to me, "Son, this anointing didn't come upon you, the Holy Spirit said to me, "Son, this anointing didn't suddenly come upon you because it was predestined for this meeting." Hold on. I'm reading it too fast. Okay. The Holy Spirit said to me, "Son, this anointing didn't suddenly come upon you because it was predestined for this meeting from the foundations of the world." Very good, Boo. It didn't come on you in respect to your evangelistic call. I wish all my evangelists walked in my power. This anointing didn't come on you because of your calling, your creed, your color, or your nation. It came upon you because you have uncovered a spiritual law, praying in other tongues for your personal edification. That law carries with it an ironclad guarantee to build you up on your most holy faith in your spirit, that part of you from which faith comes. You have found something you can do on purpose to edify yourself as much as you want to, as long as you want to, whenever you want to. Through praying in the Holy Ghost or other tongues, you can build yourself up and walk where your physical senses hold you in checkmate and convince you that God's word isn't so, to a walk that is vibrant, spirit charged, and free in the Holy Ghost, or free in Yah. After being so hungry for God's power for so long, I had accidentally uncovered one of the most important keys to growing in devil stomping, mountain moving faith, praying in tongues for personal edification. And do you think that after finding such a major key to unlock divine mysteries that anyone could keep me out of my prayer closet? Not a chance. I had a divine plan for my life to discover. And that, my beautiful people, okay, Pootie, that's enough, is our reading for today. Right?
Try.
Yosef.
I'm try one.
We're going to come back and we're going to address this later after you done practiced it. Bruh. What, Pootie?
Try it.
Because I know you just want to pull. You want to proof text me, bruh. We ain't gonna do that to each other here, right? Let's test some things.
I mean, try one.
Let me try it in a minute, Pooh. Hold on. All right. So with that being said, beautiful people, that is our reading for today. Let me go ahead.
Saturday.
It's Saturday. Yes. Okay. So Linda, I'm gonna share what I said I was gonna share. I'm gonna share it on both places today in the comment section for both Facebook and YouTube. So for those who didn't see me go explain it, you can go back and watch it. Yosef, I'm sorry. I don't know if you was there that day. So if you get a chance, maybe you should go back and check into it too. Right? Use that as a part of your study that you're pulling together to see before you test it. Because I really want to know if you test this, right? Like, seriously, I want to know if you test this. I want you to record your testings of this, if you so choose to, right? I want you to get a notebook. And every day you practice it, whether you take the 24 minutes or you choose to take an hour. Or if you choose to take 2 hours or however long, track it. Because you can't track what you don't track. Write it down every day. The time, where you was at when you prayed, right? And the length of time. But until you reach that 3-month mark, we're going to set this conversation on the shelf. So you got 3 months.
Mommy?
You should get something in 3 months,
Mommy?
right? In 3 months.
Mom?
Every single
Mom?
day. Yes, baby girl.
Raya.
Okay, well, Bella, hold on. Then we'll talk about it. Matter of fact, everybody do it if you want to, but go test it, people. Keep track of it. You ain't gotta write it down. If you rather use your note on your phone, save it, Evernote or the note section or whatever. Bella, pause that. Track it, and then keep track of things that happen. Bella, pause that. Information that comes to you. But when you get in the midst of people, where you're going to see that gift begin to kick in at, if you're somebody that's in a house all the time, you may get wisdom and dreams and stuff. But when you go out amongst people, among the public, you'll begin to see, not that you're going looking for stuff, but it'll just it'll just turn on, it'll click, and little things will happen. Let me share with you something real quick, and we're gonna do the blessing to get out of here. When I first started using this gift, right? And this was before I was still active duty. I was about to get out. I hadn't gone to shore duty yet because I went to shore duty my last year being in the military because I was pregnant. We were in the shipyards and I was doing my thing, praying in tongues.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel, guys. Hey, what should the viewers do?
I didn't have the book yet. I was just kind of doing it like sporadically. Bella. But I was doing it sporadically. I hadn't come across the book yet, but I knew that something would happen. So in my free time, I would pray in tongues, especially when I was on the ship and I was getting off of duty. So while I'm standing my watch, I would pray in tongues. And I wasn't saying it out my mouth. I was just doing it inwardly on the inside of me, right? So mind you, on duty days, you have to stay on the ship 24 hours, right? Unless your duty day is longer than that. But average, if you're staying on like a 4-hour watch, 6-hour watch, you can, you're not supposed to. On duty days, you're supposed to stay on the ship if you're attached to a ship, right? And after duty days, you can leave. But so I was on the ship 24 hours. From the time I got there, I was praying in tongues, and especially while I was standing my watch because it kept me alert, but I had to do roving watches, right? So I had to check all the fuel rooms. I had to go below decks and check the everything, all that stuff, right? Test the fuel, all those things, right? So that's what would keep me kind of like busy, so to speak, while I'm doing my watch, right? And I wasn't just like, oh my gosh, I got 4 hours left on this watch. It would keep me engaged and stay active and alert. So after my duty day, after I got off a watch, I was leaving the ship and I came out of my berthing and I was walking through the hangar bay, and there were 2 other guys from another division. They were getting off duty as well. So one of them, actually, I came out, I was walking, and then one guy, he had come out the side door over here on the hangar bay, and he was walking, and the other guy that got next to him, he came out the other hatch down here. But as I was walking behind this guy, I noticed in his hand, he was carrying a CD case. And the CD case, it had a picture of, it almost looked like the devil or a demon or something, like with a long tongue and all that stuff. So I caught a glimpse of the CD case because he had the CD case where the cover of it was out. It wasn't facing towards his body. It was facing away from his body. And I saw the cover of it. I'm like, oh, what is that? And that's what I thought to myself. I didn't say it out loud. Yes, then you can definitely speak in tongues inwardly throughout the day. That's how you can keep it going. Once you get it going, you can keep it going. It don't have to be out loud. But what you'll find when you're first starting to do it, you would drift off and be thinking about yourself, oh, I done stopped praying in tongues. Bring your stuff back in. You got to train yourself. That way you can keep it going throughout the day. And that's the point we want to get to, where we get that going on the inside of us where it's non-stop, right? Paul even mentioned it. And although Paul, with his shenanigans, he talked about it. He said, I pray in tongues more than you all, right? Which is why a lot of people like to harp on that's just a New Testament thing. And if Paul ain't real, how do we know? There's still some true principles that they put within the shenanigans of the New Testament that are still true, right? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So I thought to myself, oh, I was taken aback a second. I'm like, oh, what is that? That's what I thought to myself. And I was trying to get a good glimpse of what it was. And so when I thought to myself, ooh, what is that? That's when we got to the part of the ship where the second guy that was walking out with him, he's like, hey, dude, they dapped each other up and everything, And so as we were walking out the ship, I'm thinking to myself again, I'm like, what is that CD? And I heard I said at the time, the Holy Spirit, I heard Yahuwah say to me as clear as day, he said, that's Def Leppard. And I'm like, Def Leppard? Mind you, I'm not into rock and roll. I hadn't even heard of a Def Leppard until that day. Now here's what blew my friggin' mind, right? After I heard y'all say to me, that is Def Leppard, the guy that had met the first guy that had the CD, the one that came out the hatch, he said, oh man, what CD is that? He said, oh, this is Def Leppard. I said, and I did like that. I like stopped. I'm like, I did like that. And I looked around. I'm like, Because nobody else heard that but me, right? So that was my first time remembering actually hearing the voice of Yah and it being verified to me just like that. Like asking about something outwardly, not even asking him. But I'm like, what's that? Like, because it looked kind of weird. He said, that's Def Leppard. And then when the guy asked him, he said, hey, dude, what CD you got? He said, oh, this is Def Leppard. I'm like, you know what? I said, so I'm telling y'all have to go test it. And at this time, when that happened, I didn't understand the gift like I understand it now. So things that were happening to me by default because I had stumbled upon a spiritual law and principle that I didn't yet recognize and couldn't explain to you how it was happening. But I know that I had tuned myself to the Spirit of Yah because I had made it a practice while I was standing my watch to keep myself alert and active to pray in tongues inwardly. Right? So I'm gonna share with y'all a lot of stuff. That's what I'm saying. So yourself, we'll have this conversation in 3 months, bruh. We'll come back here, right? So with that being said, beautiful people, it is Saturday, December the 18th, 2021, day 331 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. Pause that, Bella. Another 3-year consecutive day count, day 9 represents a major milestone turning point, right? And we're definitely about to make a turn, right? We're going to amp it up, right? All right, beautiful people. We read First Maccabees chapter 8 and chapter 9, and we read all of chapter 2 of Walk of the Spirit, the Walk of Power. So let's go ahead and do the blessing. Come on over here, little girl.
Next second,
all right, y'all.
Keep watching that.
So, but I really do. Although I kind of said it in a joking manner, I was really serious when I was talking to Yesa. Bella, chill out.
Oh, now you keep talking. Now I cannot do the blessing.
We about to do the blessing. But I was serious. I really do want y'all to track it. Track what happens. You know what? I'm gonna start tracking my days too. Although I've been tracked, just to let you know, I'm gonna track every single day. I'm gonna write down the times that I spend praying in tongues. I'm gonna type it in my Bella, chill out. I'm gonna type it in my digital, my little digital notebook that I always keep my stuff in. And then I don't know, we'll see when we share. Maybe like when we do our like when we do the the Zoom meeting once a month, when I get that started, we can share what's actually happening with us so far and the different changes or the blessings that we've seen. Or maybe if you've been struggling with something, if you've seen leeway in that a little bit where things have gotten easier, right? I know people that use this gift, like say they had addictions to porn, right? That's a hard addiction to break, right? Especially depending on how long you've had that addiction. But praying in tongues is definitely a way. If you're having other sexual sin issues, right? You really have to devote yourself. You really have to give yourself to discipline, right? You really do.
Mommy.
And it's hard, but one more quick story I'm going to share with you about someone who was stuck in sexual addiction. It was elated. This is a story my pastor had told us. The same one that, I told you about, the church we was going to when my husband prayed for this woman and she got delivered, right? So there was, I forget her name, but he was telling us about it, and she had a sexual addiction, right? She just couldn't leave the men alone. But I don't remember if he said he went. I don't think he went to her house. I think she stayed in the neighborhood or something, because the way he explained it was she was sitting outside on her porch, and he stopped to talk to her, and she would, he just asked her how everything was going, her spiritual life and everything, and she was just saying, Pastor, I'm really having a struggle with this, and he was just saying, well, sister, don't give up. Keep doing what you know to do. Just, it may be hard, but keep making a decision to do what's right. He said, the more you choose to do what's right, the easier it'll get for you. He said, just don't give up. Just don't give up. Yes, I heard of demon possession. Yes, I've seen real live demon possessed people. right? But he said, don't give up. And so he said, he told her, he said, keep praying in the tongues. He said, don't give up. He said, don't ever stop putting the word of, at the time he was saying the word of God, he said, don't ever stop putting the word of God in you. And he said, if you focus on it, you know, he said, you should see change in your life in a year. You know, he said, and granted, he said, different things is going to tempt you. He said, the temptations may even seem to get stronger. Right, he said, but that's when you need to pretty much dig your heels in, you know, and cry out to y'all for help, right? He said, run from temptation. He said, do like Joseph did. Take off and run. He said, don't put yourself in situations where your flesh may give into it. He said, because the spirit is willing. He said, but the flesh is so weak, right? So, but after a year, okay, Bella. Y'all, we working on patience with her. Or maybe I just talk too much. Okay, I'll definitely let y'all know when we're going to do the Zoom. So
Yes, I do.
Hold on, Tootie. So, but about a year and a half later, she actually got in touch with him, and she said she was practicing what he did, and she wasn't struggling with it hardly anymore. She said even when the temptation come, it was so much easier for her to just go on about her day and not give into it, you know. But it really helps. It really helps. Bella. I wanted to get more details of this story, but anyway, make a long story short, it really helped her, and she was pretty much delivered from that. She got control of it. She got control of the thing that was once controlling her. All right, beautiful people, let's do the blessing. Robert Betwabu. All right, y'all. The blessing is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, on this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, Yahuwah will kneel before us, presenting gifts, and will guard us with a hedge of protection. Yahuwah will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards us, bringing order, and he will provide us with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahuwah will lift up his wholeness of being and look upon us, and he will set in place all we need to be whole and complete. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people. I love y'all. I'll see y'all back here Monday morning. We're not here tomorrow because we are resting. Remember the Sabbath. With the moon cycle, it falls on Sunday. The new moon was on the Sunday. Remember, the new moon is the line leader for the Sabbath of that month. So whatever day the new moon shows, Sunday, that's where the Sabbaths fall for that moon cycle. And that's to keep everything in line with the original time that Yah has set. All right, y'all. I love y'all. I'll see y'all Monday morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, I can see this actually work.
Yeah, try it. I don't think it's going to work up here.
Huh.